Before we start this episode, I wanted to tell you that if you're looking for free dog training courses, you can take the Victoria Stilwell Academy's most popular free course, Building Your Dog's Confidence, right now by going to vsdogtrainingacademy.com. That's vsdogtrainingacademy.com. Okay, now on with the podcast. If you've listened to my podcast before, you will know who my next guest is. And if you live in the UK, you certainly will know who my next guest is. Yes, it's the one and only Nicky Campbell. And we share something. And we are proud parents of senior dogs. And that's what I want to talk to him today. But I also want to find out what makes Nicky Campbell Nicky Campbell. So welcome back to the podcast, Nicky. I'm so glad you're here.
Oh, me too. It's always wonderful to talk to you. I love your wisdom. You're not a senior person yet. You've got a lot of time to go before that happens. But I love your wisdom about dogs, and you've taught me so much. And the thing you taught me, which I think above all is something that I say to people, and I always quote you, is that if you understand their body language, you are so much further into understanding how they tick and how they operate and how they think. And your relationship with your dog is a million times better if you actually understand all the body language and what they're trying to say and how they're trying to communicate. And you once told me that. And it's such good advice to just make that effort to know what does that body shape mean, and what do they mean when they're doing that with their head and doing that with their tail. And it revolutionizes your relationship with your dog.
I spend a lot of my time teaching people how to listen. And that truly is listen to your dog. That's observing. It's not just listening to their vocalizations. I truly mean observing and understanding what they're trying to say to you. So I'm really glad that you've gained from that, because yes, body language is kind of, oh my gosh, they're so expressive with their bodies. It's sometimes really hard to recognize and understand the signals that dogs are giving us. And it does become harder as dogs get older, as they become a little bit less expressive in some ways with their bodies. But I want to talk a little bit about Maxwell and your relationship with Maxwell a little bit later on. Can we start talking about Long Lost Family? Because this is the show that you do for ITV. It is extremely popular. And why Long Lost Family? Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Well, I think they came to me originally. People looking for long lost relatives, whether it be mothers who'd had babies adopted back in the dark ages of the 60s and 70s, and they just wanted to find out if they were okay and where they were, and to see them and to hold them again. Long lost brothers, long lost sisters. There are all manner of reasons that people came to us. There are all, even estrangement as well, people who are lost and people who are seeking for love, and also a sense of belonging and a sense of understanding who they actually are. Because as an adopted person myself, even though my adoption search wasn't driven by, I've got to find my real mummy and my real dad and all that stuff, because my real mum is my adoptive mum. But mine was driven by curiosity. I just couldn't go through the rest of my life not knowing where I had come from, who the woman who gave birth to me was, and who the man with whom she had a relationship which led to her giving birth to me was. And so I just had to know that stuff, because I didn't want to sit on the porch drinking bourbon with a straw in my mouth one day thinking, I wish I'd done that. And so I did it. And I know. And it's great that I know. And it's a challenge, but in all sorts of ways, you have to put on an emotional hard hat and an asbestos suit. But I'm so pleased I did it, because questions were answered. Life is complicated, always was, always will be, but questions were answered. And that's fundamental. And actually, when I met my birth mother, the first time I met her in a Dublin hotel in 1989, when you meet the woman who gave birth to you for the first time, when you're in your 30s, or just about 30. It's pretty terrifying. Do you know what the first thing she said to me was? And there was lots of displacement activity, and what do you say? But she said something to me at the time, and you'll love this. I said, hello, hello, hello. And she said, hello, hello. And then we sat down, and she said, do you like dogs? And at the time I thought, what a bizarre thing to say. It's like as if it was the first thing to come into her head. But we had a difficult relationship. It was very needy, and I didn't really embrace her. I found her, and then I kind of moved on a bit. I feel eternally guilty about that. Although I carried her coffin at her funeral, and we had a relationship, and she knew. So those questions were answered for her. But later on, I thought, what a strange question. But then I think it's a really profound question. Because what she's saying is, what sort of person are you? Because if I'd said right then, do you like dogs, she says. If I said, no, I don't like dogs, I don't like animals, that's a pretty good litmus test of what you're like. And I think it was that. And when I said, yes, I love dogs, and I love animals, I think it was a bit of an icebreaker, and it was a bit of a relief for her as well. What sort of person doesn't like animals?
Well, not the kind of people that I really want to associate with. I think that's the answer to that. Not everybody has to be a dog lover. I understand that. Not everybody likes dogs. Not everybody wants to be around a dog or share their lives with a dog. That's fine. But I always seem to prefer the people that do. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be dogs, just any kind of animals. I just do. And how then did the people from Wall to Wall, did they know your background? Is that why they asked you to do Long Lost Family?
Yes. They were looking for, just on the dog thing, whether, I know what you mean, you do have to love dogs or cats or whatever, but how can you not be totally, utterly fascinated by other species, the other beings that share our planet? We have the privilege of sharing the planet with them. It's their planet too. People just forget that. It's their planet too. But how can you not be totally fascinated and also privileged and honored that thing through there, lying on my bed, farting, it shares our life, shares my life, loves me. We love him. He loves us. This is the epicenter of his world. This is his heart and his hearth. And it's ours too. That is magical. It's wonderful. It's just incredible. It's a miracle. Species to species relationships. Woof! So Long Lost Family, they came to me, and because they were looking for a journalist who was adopted and had traced his birth mother and birth father. So it was kind of not that long a list. But I think people say, including my wife, when she can tolerate me, that I do have an emotional intelligence, and I have many faults, but I do have an emotional intelligence and an empathy and a sensitivity, and I think that helps. And it also helps that when I'm talking to the people who have been found or who are seeking, I've done it as well. So, and also Davina, who I do the show with, she's had lots of issues in her life which funnel into her experience and funnel into her life, which help her on the show, and also make people know that we are just, fallible schmucks, and we've had our problems and we've had our challenges and we've got through them, but we kind of understand this stuff.
I think people look at celebrities and but you are not just a celebrity. You have spent your life interviewing celebrities as well, as a DJ and as somebody who's passionate about music and all the work that you've done. I think we're just humans at the end of the day. That's why I love animals too, because it doesn't matter who you are. They don't judge. They're just there. They don't see, oh, you're a celebrity. You just did this. You have so many fans. You have so many million followers on social media. They don't care. They just are. And they love you when you look grotty and when you look great and when you feel good and when you feel bad. And they're there for you.
Yeah. It's
What other
funny,
relationship is like that?
I know, but it's funny as well that when I took Maxwell, who's 14 and a half, and it was quite loud for him, I don't think I'll take him again, to the Animal Hero Awards, because people love it when you take your dogs, and I took him. And he had a good time. Because at these award ceremonies, they always have kind of tables of influencers stuff, Instagram people and Love Island people and beautiful people that the young people all know who they are. These sort of Adonises and Adonai and whatever the equivalent is. Beautiful men, beautiful women, beautiful boys, beautiful girls. And there were some very famous ones who had won Love Island, the big dating competition, and they were at a table. And Maxwell was wandering around, because he's a Labrador retriever, of course, he was trying to get food off people's tables. He was trying to. And he went up to their table and they went, oh, and they loved him because they were dog lovers. And they were putting and he was licking all their faces and they were loving it. And Maxwell was licking all the faces of the Love Islanders. And I thought to myself, oh dear, I took him on a walk earlier on and I know what he was eating.
You see, I mean, only a dog could do that. Right? Only a dog could go up to everybody in the room and go lick their faces and it's okay.
I don't think I could do it.
No, I think you'd be escorted out. It would be bad. So, of course, you are a great supporter of the Animal Hero Awards. I have been presenting once with you. I think we were on the same stage together. And what an amazing evening that is. And it just shows you the power of animals and also the power of the people that love them. But you've always been an animal advocate. When did you get your first dog?
Well, this is interesting. There's a couple, because when I started to speak to my birth mother about stuff, and she told me the story of how I had been born and the first few days, she said that before I was born, when she was pregnant and about to have me in a boarding house in Portobello, and she'd fled Ireland because of the judgment and the fingers that would be pointed and the curtains that would be twitching, of course, because she was pregnant. She had an affair with a younger man. This was Ireland in 1960, 1961. Goodness me. It was behind the curve even compared to this, to the main United Kingdom, England, Scotland, Wales. This was, Catholic Ireland. And so she said that there was a little dog in the boarding house called Toby, who was under the bed all the time, sleeping there. And when I was born, Toby took to me and started to guard me. And if anyone went near me, Toby would bark at them. And it was like me and my birth mother and Toby in there against the world in that tragic 9 days before the social worker came and took me away. And, she was inconsolable. And I think Toby comforted her. And then Toby went up and looked for me for a while. Went around the house looking for me, apparently. And then he was at the window looking out all the time to see where I'd gone. And she was, even though she was a nurse, he was up there on the bed, even though I was a baby, and he was with me and sleeping with me. And when I had a breakdown, and I did a lot of stuff with my psychiatrist, and I mentioned, all this. And I said, there's this little dog Toby before I was born and just when I was born. My mother being so distraught, my birth mother, would that have had an influence on me? He said, oh yeah, imprint, very early imprint has an influence on you for the rest of your life. And I said, what about, and I just said, what about that little dog? And he said, oh yeah. He said, do you love dogs now? And I said, I've always absolutely loved dogs. And he said, well, you had very early contact with a dog. And you bonded with a dog in a way that a baby is just a little animal, and that you bonded with the dog. And then when I went to my forever home, as they say in adoption, to meet my big sister Fiona and mum and dad, that was 3 months later. I was in a baby home for 3 months. Because my sister, who was my parents' birth child, because my sister she might have her nose put out of joint a bit by the new baby arriving. So they got a puppy from next door, because the dog next door, what was her name? I can't remember the mother's name now, although I do know it. I'm just a senior moment. But she had a litter of puppies. And we had, she'd got out one night. She'd escaped one night and came back pregnant. And she was a fox terrier. So Candy was a fox terrier cross with goodness only knows what. I just imagine like that scene in the Lady and the Tramp, where they have a liaison and then they go to the Italian restaurant and said, "Well, I know," and they sing that song. And so Candy and me were baby and puppy. And we were together, and we were inseparable from the age of 1 to 11. And we did everything together. I copied him. I sniffed everything, and went round on all fours. And he waited for me after school every day. And we were brothers. I didn't really consider the fact that we were different species. We were just brothers. And we used to play fight. And then people would come to the door and say to my mother, "Oh, your dog is mauling your son." And then my mother would say, No, it's fine. And then when people came to the door, my mother's friends, I used to sniff them like Candy did. And sometimes that was quite embarrassing. And then, get down, Candy, down, Nicky, the two of us. And then one day I came back from school. We just come back from the summer holidays, and we had to put him in kennels, and we came back, and then I got through the door and he wasn't there. I was 11 years old, and my mother was standing there in the shadows, and she said, "Your father had to take Candy was ill. We knew he had been poorly, and we had to take him to the vet, put him to sleep, and it was the worst day of my life. It's still one of the worst days of my life."
You grew up then from a very early age, literally from birth then, around dogs. And when you became a radio DJ and Top of the Pops presenter, and I think that's where I first saw you, did you have dogs throughout that time as well? Were you just too busy? What was your life like in between then and now? Did you always have a relationship with animals?
I didn't have another dog until I got Maxwell, because I didn't want to go through that pain again. Pain was so profound. Also my lifestyle. But I did have moments then I thought, well, I could have a dog now, but I didn't. Because I just thought, there's a lot going on in life, and it had a real effect on me. I've got a picture of Candy over there. I'll get it. Hang on. And there.
Oh, wow, beautiful.
Little patchy face there, looking up. Always looking up there. And there's good, photos of dogs. You go, "Hello, big dog, Candy," and they look at you, and it's like one of those. You just got it. Oh, there we are. Let's go looking at you. And so I didn't have a dog until I got Maxwell nearly 15 years ago. But wherever there was a dog, I wanted to be. And I would cross the road to see a dog. And once I was at university in Aberdeen, and I thought, I need to see a dog. I need to be with a dog for a couple of days. So I persuaded my friend to get his motorbike, and we got on the back of the motorbike, and I got on the back of the motorbike, and we motored from Aberdeen to Perthshire, which is quite a journey in Scotland. So I could stay with my sister and her husband, because they had an Irish setter called Fen, who I was very bonded with. I just had to. It's like a withdrawal symptoms. If I wasn't with the dog for very long, it was a terrible, terrible thing. I had to be with a dog always. So I was never. If there ever was a dog, I'd ignore the people and go straight for the dog to bond with the dog. There was something. Maybe it goes right back to the early days, but there's something so calming about being with it. I love the smell of a dog. It's it's like that puppy smell, but they have it all their lives. And so yeah, that's me and dogs. My life with dogs. And then we got Maxwell. I think my wife thought I was at a point in my life when the children were old enough. And she's aware of my ups and my downs because I'm bipolar. But she thought, yeah, this would be great if we had a dog. Because she had a dog called Jason, a Labrador retriever called Jason, and she grew up in the Bahamas. Her father worked there. And she came back one day, and Jason had been bitten by a snake and died when he was 4 years old. So she had a similar experience. And so we went on this adventure with Maxwell, and 14 and a half years later, he's amazing. A bit deaf, but he's great. And he has bouts of being a puppy. He'll just on the car, he would start running around and stuff like that and chasing balls. He's in incredible shape for a 14 and a half year old. And his mother only died a few months ago. So I think he's got good genes.
Yeah, and for Labradors especially, because I had my chocolate Labrador, Sadie, and she came into our lives when she was 5 years old. She passed away about 4 years ago now, but she was 16 when she passed away. So she was just our heart dog, the love of our lives, really. But, and when she got older, obviously she had all kinds of things of arthritis, and she started to get cognitive decline, and so that kind of moves me on to what it's now like for you living with a senior dog, because October is or has been Senior Dog Awareness Month, and I am a huge advocate. I belong to, and in fact, are on the board of some organizations that rescue senior dogs or give grants to organizations that rescue senior dogs and people who need help with their senior dogs, for example. But they have my heart, and I adopted a Shih Tzu. She was 11 years old, and I adopted her. She was actually a cruelty case that a friend of mine had found, and she was in a hot car, and she would have died if my friend had not got her out, and if the fire department hadn't come. But anyway, her owner, the person who allowed her to be in that car for 2 hours, I have to say, it was about 110 degrees on the dashboard when they got her out. She wasn't allowed to keep dogs anymore. And she was actually convicted of animal cruelty. So Bella came into our lives, and she's now 14, and she's an absolute delight. And I'm like, So I'm a huge advocate for the senior dogs, but there's no doubt about it that, yes, medically, you have to, every 6 months, make sure they have their wellness checks. And also, there definitely are more medical bills associated with elderly dogs' needs. But tell me what it's been like from your point of view to sort of what changes have you seen in Maxwell as he's got older? And what are some of the challenges that you've had living with a senior dog?
Well, sometimes he loves coming upstairs, and a couple of times he's fallen over coming up the stairs. But he doesn't have any cognitive decline. He's the same intellectual he always has been. So he's fine there. He's in incredible shape, actually. Although what I would say is that Misty, because I've got a mother and daughter West Highland Terriers, they're smart dogs, really are. And the mother Misty is 11 and a half, nearly 12, and her daughter is 7, who is my wife's other daughter. She's like really bonded with my wife, because when we had the litter, she was the first out, and her mother Misty didn't feed her because she was concentrating on all the others that were to be born, and so we had to feed her with it. Well, and she really bonded with Tina, and they're incredibly close to each other, Maisie and Tina. So Misty took ill, and she was shaking on the floor, and we didn't want any food and stuff, and she was really, really ill. So we took her to the emergency vet. And the emergency vet said, "This is bad," and she was in there for a couple of nights. Then they said she's got to go down to there's a big hospital in Guildford. She's got to go down. We've got to refer her there so they can know what's going on. So we went down there and she had to have scans. And of course, everything's so expensive, but she had to have scans and tests and all sorts. Then they said, well, we need to do possibly another scan to see what's going on. And they had a look and they said, it's her internal organs. There's some really bad stuff going on in there. And we think that this is possibly it. Look, do not resuscitate, or should we resuscitate her in the night if she passes away? And it was like that. So I've got 4 girls, 4 daughters, and they're kind of 24 and 22 and 21 and 18. But they were all dog adorers, and it was a terrible time for the family, and everyone's crying. And we said, I took the reins and I said, okay, she's been amazing, and we've been blessed having her. She's such an extraordinary little dog with an incredible mind and attitude. And I phoned the vet and I said, look, we'll come down, the 4 of us and the other 2 dogs, we'll come down tomorrow night. And they said, yeah, we'll stay open for you. And you come down about 7 o'clock and we'll put her to sleep. And then we were all crying. And then we got a call from the vet saying, well, look, we've just had a look at the scan again, and we think if we take her gallbladder out, that might unblock things and make it all a bit better down there. And so I said, how much would that be? And they told me, and I kind of fainted. And then we said, and then they everyone was on to me. And I said, okay, we can't not. Because, do you know what? If she'd been 14 or 15, I probably wouldn't have taken that decision to have the operation. But she's 11 and a half, 12. And it's because terriers can go quite a long way. She could go to 15 or 16 years old. So I thought, yeah. And what we did was we said, right, we won't do that this year and we won't do that, and we'll make economies. Everyone's making economies. And, some people might say, well, all that money on your dog? She's one of the family. We love her so much. And she really is an extraordinary character. And so we did it. And Tina had cancelled the insurance the week before. Even though we looked into how much, even though we looked into how much we would have got, and it actually wasn't much. Pet insurance isn't great. They're always moving the goalposts. The dogs wee on the goalposts, and then they move the goalposts. And so my daughter called it not the cost of living crisis. Cost of living crisis. My daughter called it the cost of loving crisis that we were having. Yeah, but some people might say, how can you spend all that money? It's decadent spending all that money on your dog, but she's given us so much happiness. She's done so much for our mental health and being in the family, and so much for the fact, because dogs do so much for the family, kind of an epicenter. You all communicate with each other sometimes through, via the dog. The dog is a big, lovely center of love in the family. And so we did it, and she's getting there. She's much, much better. And we all say, look, if she's on our bed on Christmas morning, it will have been worth it. And I think she's going to make it, and she's much, much better.
Oh, that's so good to hear. I have to say, what you're saying strikes a lot of chords with me. First of all, the fact that they are the epicenter, and my daughter is a freshman at college. She just started at university, and so of course we're the empty nesters now. And that is a whole new way of being, and I miss her terribly and definitely have not been dealing with it very well. But I have my Jasmine, my Chihuahua, and my Bella, and of course my husband. But we have those dogs that are still our babies. They are there as our constant. And so that they've been such a huge comfort to both of us, with our daughter Alex not being here. But and of course everything moves on, and I understand that. But we, at the same time, we also nearly lost our Bella, because she, like many dogs, had canine vestibular disease. And if you've never experienced a dog having vestibular disease, it is like a vertigo when people get vertigo. but in dogs, and it can come on very suddenly. There can be many causes, but a lot can be idiopathic, as in unexplained. And for both of my dogs, it was unexplained. My Sadie had it. All of a sudden, she ran out into the garden. She couldn't stand up. Her eyes were rolling in her head. Did not know what was going on. She was panting. She was salivating. She kept collapsing. We rushed to the emergency vet. 4 days later, right as rain. You wouldn't have known that there was an issue. And the same thing happened to Bella. But it looked different with Bella. And suddenly in the morning, I woke up and I heard this dog. I just heard what I can only say was screaming. And she was on her bed flipping like a fish. And I thought she was having a seizure. So I obviously panicked and picked her up, but it was very difficult because she was moving so much and she was so terrified by what she was experiencing, and her head was flopping everywhere. And we rushed her to the vet, and they again diagnosed canine vestibular disease. Now that did have a bit more of an impact on her, but here she is another 8 months later, pretty much right as rain. I mean, she does have some issues with her hindquarters, and there is a little bit of cognitive decline as sometimes. And for those of you with senior dogs, don't worry if you suddenly see or hear some barking, because we now know Bella has this behavior that when she smells food, because again, like Maxwell, she's a bit deaf, but when she smells food, she starts barking. And that's understandable because she loves food. But other times when we have no idea why she's barking, because being I would say partially deaf, nearly deaf, there's definitely things that she can't hear in her everyday environment. Is she hearing other things that we don't know? But she just suddenly starts to bark. But as weird as that is, and as obviously challenging as sometimes these behaviors are to deal with, I just wouldn't ever change the fact that we made the decision, even though she was so very, very ill at the emergency vets, that we didn't think that she would come round. We made the decision to try everything we possibly could. And yes, was it a vast amount of money? It was insane. And, you have to almost take out a second mortgage, but couldn't not try. She's my child. I know she has fur, but she's also my child. So I'm with you, Nicky. I know that we could be criticized, as well as I'm sure there's a lot of people who do exactly the same thing as we did for spending this amount of money on our dogs, but they are our family members. How could you not? A quick break here to get a word from this episode's sponsor, the Victoria Stilwell Academy. Now, did you know that I have a school that teaches people to be dog trainers? I love It's Me or the Dog and my work as a dog trainer on television, but those of you who know me know that my true passion really lies with helping other people live their best lives with dogs. And I love seeing that truly magical transformation when that light bulb goes off with someone I'm helping with their dog. That's what it's all about. It's the secret sauce that pet professionals like me, who work with these amazing animals, that's what we all share. It's what makes being a dog trainer the most rewarding and enriching job I can imagine. It's why I love what I do. And it's also why I founded the Victoria Stilwell Academy, so that I could provide a roadmap to others who want to help dogs and the people who love them learn to do what they love doing at the highest level, that is, to become professional dog trainers. Earning a living working with dogs professionally has been a dream of mine for years, and that passion is what drives all of us at VSA to create courses that are specially designed to help adult human learners chase their dreams. Now, most people already know about our flagship dog trainer course, which provides both online only and in-person options. But did you know that we also offer both dog guardians and future professionals a fully refundable 10-hour online course taught by me and other awesome VSA faculty and it's called the Fundamentals of Dog Training and Behavior course. Now, I know it's not the sexiest name, but it's one of the most dynamic learning experiences available to dog geeks, and it's a pretty awesome first step to see if learning with VSA is right for you. Now, as a Positively Podcast listener, you can use promo code PODCAST right now to get the Fundamentals course for 50% off. That is $150 value. So, take our course. Plus, we also have a couple of free starter courses. They're free, completely free, including a course called Building Your Dog's Confidence, which reveals the secret ingredient to a happy dog life. So, I encourage you to check out VSA today. As I said, we have courses for all levels of learners. So it doesn't matter whether you're a newbie with your first puppy or a grizzled vet already making a living as a pet professional. Visit positively.com/VSA to learn more and enroll in a free course. That is positively.com/VSA. We all want the best for our dogs, whether that means you taking home some key tips for your own dogs or adding the ultimate in professional dog trainer education. Visit positively.com/VSA today. VSA, it is the future of dog training. And now, back to the podcast.
Yeah, I just feel really lucky that I'm in a position to do that, even though we can say, well, we'll take some money from that and we won't do that thing that we were going to do and we won't buy that sofa that we had to buy, so we'll just wait till it. So we managed to, do all that and work it all out. But I just feel sorry for the people who haven't got the money. They have a little dog and it's ill and it's their child, their friend, their best friend, their companion, and they can't afford that situation. That's tragic. So I give a little bit of money to charities that help with that, because I just know how important dogs are to people who are lonely as well and who are on their own. Misty is much better now. She's not perfect, and also she gets cold as well. Her fur, her hair was never right after she gave birth, and it's got a bit worse recently. So we've you might be able to see that. She's got...
she's divine. Yes, I see what she looks like.
A picture of Misty with a little jumper on. Yeah, that's right. So that helps her as well. Do you know what she is? She's so really slow on the walks. The others are ahead, even Maxwell. And she just toddles along on the walks. I don't know what that means. What might that mean? Very, very slow on the walks.
Well, yeah, I do think, with our elderly dogs, especially when they've had an episode or they've had an illness, and movement in general is just harder. We don't know how it has affected them neurologically or, the body takes a beating, but also just general aging with arthritis and, not being able to be as mobile. But you know what doesn't seem to ever fade? And that's the sniffer. So I will take Bella out. She's now 14 and a half. And with all of her arthritis, she's on pain medication. But I take her out for our sniffy walk. We don't go very far at all. In fact, we probably don't get even further than 100 yards away from our house. But she sniffs, and she sniffs for as long as as long as she wants to sniff, because it's not so much physical exercise now with an elderly dog. It's still that mental stimulation. And just by even allowing your dog to do that, you can really help a dog, even a senior dog, even when they are showing signs of cognitive decline. And that could be things like barking at times when the dog wouldn't ordinarily bark, not being able to sleep so well at night, waking up in the middle of the night, getting into corners and not knowing how to get out. That's exactly what our Labrador Sadie had, where she would just walk into a corner of our kitchen cabinets, into the corner of the kitchen, and she wouldn't know how to reverse. And so things like that. But by feeding a really good food that's rich in coconut oil, and also, and dogs don't like coconut oil, by the way, so you have to have a food that has it infused within it. But by giving her these kind of oils and giving her supplements, giving her the right kind of pain medication, and allowing her to sniff and do some fabulous sort of puzzle, toy, problem-solving activities, we were really able to help her. And so that's just what I do with Bella. It's not about the length of the walk. It's about the quality of the walk. And if she's interested in sniffing, that's important. But I also do find sometimes there is pain. And even just the act of a dog putting their neck down, of an elderly dog putting their neck down on the ground to sniff, can sometimes be difficult. So then I would take them to a place where there are trees, take them to a place where there are bushes, so they don't have to put their head down to sniff on the ground. They can actually sniff things that are at nose height. So it's really kind of understanding your senior dog and what your senior dog needs, and sort of those parameters, I would say, their body is now saying, I can't do.
Yeah. And you're right that she loves to sniff, and that's so stimulating for them, isn't it? Just to take her out for a little sniff. It's great. But, it's all worth it. We have to lift her onto the sofa. She doesn't jump up anymore. But when you do lift her onto the sofa, and then her daughter leaps up and Maxwell leaps up, and you're sitting there, and then then Misty will get on top of get on my lap. The other one Maisie will try and get her mother off the lap so she can be closest to me. But they'll both snuggle into me, then Maxwell snuggling into me. So there we are, the four of us there on the sofa. To hell with dogs not being on the sofa. Life's too short not to have a dog up on the sofa. And so people say, the sofa, we never have a dog on the sofa. Oh, shut up. And the four of them are just cuddling me. And there we are, four beings connecting with each other with love, this tactile connection, just feeling each other's warmth and snuggling into each other. And I've got a nice glass of whiskey and I'm watching telly and they're with me. And that's heaven.
It is absolute heaven. And people think that I'm the person who says, you shouldn't have your dog on the sofa or the bed. And I'm not. It's just I deal with a lot of dogs that guard areas like beds and sofas. So I have to work on that first before. But my dog sleeps on the bed. My dogs get up on the sofa. And I have to say it's so comforting. It's wonderful to have them. And if you think about it, like what you said right at the beginning, isn't it amazing that these two species connect? We are two very effective predatory species. We are predators, and yet we're lying there on the couch together, feeling completely safe, trusting each other, because there's a lot of trust when you're close to somebody. There's a lot of trust when you sleep in front of somebody, because you're completely vulnerable. There's a lot of trust when you eat in front of people as well. And our dogs, we have the relationship that we have with our dogs. And I think, when you look at it from that point of view, it is quite remarkable. Now, you write a lot about your journey and your relationship with Maxwell in your book. And I would love for people to read your book. Can you talk to me a little bit about that?
Yeah, people can't see if they're listening to it, but that's me and Maxwell on the front of the book. One of the family, why a dog called Maxwell changed my life. And the key to it is, it talks about my adoption. That's where family comes in. I talk about long lost family. I talk about identity crises growing up as an adopted child, but being in a loving family, but never quite knowing who I was. I talk about mental health issues. But the big thing at the heart of that book is Maxwell, because I talk about my advocacy for animals as well, and the relationship with my birth mother. It's dedicated to my mum, and the last chapter is Mum's funeral, my adoptive mother, my real mum. And I'm really proud of the book, but at the heart of it is when I had my breakdown. I've always been very up and down, but it really got bad. And what I was, at the time, I was doing a lot of stuff for elephants and fighting against ivory and saving elephants, because elephants are just astonishing animals. They are, we say dogs are clever. They have an emotional breadth comparable to our own. Extraordinary memory. If you have an extraordinary memory, they have proven memories of a lifetime. If you have a memory, it means you dwell on things. You think about things. And it's a very easy bit of science to say, if you dwell on things and you think about things, you have a sophisticated self-awareness. And that's why I see them in, babies taken from the wild in Zimbabwe out to Chinese circuses and Chinese zoos. And those 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds remembering where they were taken from and remembering their mothers. What a hell they're going through. I think sometimes we are just we know we are. Sometimes we're monstrous. And so I was fighting and fighting and fighting for elephants. And I was doing my radio show in the morning in London, and I was flicking through the news, and I saw this news in one of the Indian newspapers about those trains roar through the forest there, where there's no speed restriction. They just roar through the forest, and the elephants are on the line to smash into them. And a family of elephants had been killed by a train, and there was a picture of, I'm sorry to be so graphic, but it was the picture of elephants are hanging from a bridge, and the others were coming back, the survivors trying to mourn, and the rest of the family, to see where their loved one was and what had happened, and to see if they could do anything. And it's so deeply affecting and moving when you see elephants do that. And it just broke me. And it broke me to the extent I had to go to Manchester. So I left the studio and I just went through the motions, and my bit would come and I'd just do an interview and then finish it and close the microphone. But this thing I'd just seen was so shattering. And it said everything about our species and everything about theirs. Daphne Sheldrick, who's not with us anymore, but at the Elephant Orphanage, she runs the Elephant Orphanage, and she did in Nairobi, the David Sheldrick Wildlife Trust. And she said, elephants are just like us, except better. And so I literally got to Euston Station to go to Manchester, and I collapsed on the ground. And there used to be grass just at the front of the station, and I was on that bit of grass. And I was just at the bottom, and I was just weeping. I just started weeping, and I picked the phone up and said, people just step over you in London, and they were probably saying, "Oh, that's that guy who used to do Top of the Pops," and they were just stepping over me. And I managed to get my phone and ring my wife Tina, and I was sort of, and she said, "What's going on? What's going on? What's going on?" And I managed to explain that it was it, and I couldn't carry on anymore, and it was terrible, and I'd been tipped over the edge. And then she said, "Come home to us, come home to us, come home to the girl, come home now, and we'll get you in a taxi and we'll get it all sorted out." And then she said, "Come home to Maxwell," and that did it, and it kind of got my head together. It's quite difficult to talk about. And so I went home. And I lay on the bed when I got home. And when you've got when you're very depressed, you don't really want to talk to anyone, and you don't want to answer any questions, because that's just it's part of the it just makes it worse. And so I was lying on the bed, and Tina knew that because she's seen me like that before. And so I was lying on the bed, and then I had this little tinkly collar coming outside, and he leapt up onto the bed. And literally, when they put their head, he put his head on my chest like that. So his head was resting on my chest like that, his chin, and you can feel the warmth through his body. And he knew, he absolutely knew that I was, and it hit the warmth and the kind of electricity of love coming from him to me was amazing. I'll never forget it. And it's not Disney, it's Darwin, because they have to know stuff if they're going to live in a pack successfully, and they have to use the senses beyond our senses, because they can't explain things to each other verbally. So they have to have deeper ways of and using senses that we never had, or have long lost senses, or have sort of drifted into abeyance. So that it's absolutely what they have to do in the situation in the wild. They have to be able to know who's sick and who's not, and who needs to be looked after. And he looked after me, and he was incredible. And I know you know what I'm talking about.
I do. I feel like there are many stories of all kinds of animals saving people like that. But I think, when I read your book and I heard your story and heard your experience, I think it just shows how incredible these animals are and what they do for us. And I know my dogs have always been a source of comfort for me. I think our lives obviously they're very different with the work we do, but we have a lot of similarities in the fact that we spend a lot of time away from our families, do a lot of travel. We not insert ourselves, but we, go to families to hear their experiences, we interview a lot of people, we do red carpets, and so that's all fun and glamorous sometimes, and sometimes it's truly not. But at the end of the day, we need love. We need our animals, and our animals are the ones that ground us and show us what love is all about. And when I come back from a long day at work, or when I come back from 5 weeks sometimes of travel that I do when I'm filming, especially for It's Me or the Dog, and they're there greeting me, 2 little faces at the door. It's just indescribable. And people who have dogs, and most people who are listening to this podcast do, they know what we mean. So it doesn't matter kind of what your experience is, what you do. The fact that those dogs are there for you at the end of the day. And that's why I do what I do, right? Because I fly the flag of positive training, being humane whilst teaching dogs, because I truly believe we have to give back. God, they give us so much. And so we have to help them, assimilate into this strange, weird world that we live in. So that's my job, but we have to do it in the right kind of way. And I think the experience that you talked about, seeing the elephants like that, my experience of, which is a little less, but still profound, I am so emotionally affected and angry and upset and disgusted by people who train dogs in very tough ways and harsh ways, and use equipment like shock and choke collars and physically reprimand their dogs. And thankfully it's less. That old punitive style of training is kind of fading, which is why I've made it my mission. But when I still see it out there, it has such a visceral effect on me that sometimes it's really hard to keep going when you're seeing this constantly, this cruelty, and people can be effing cruel and disgraceful and disgusting. And so, because I've also spent a lot of my time in rescue and doing puppy mill busts and dog fighting busts, I see that cruelty firsthand. So I think when you are so empathetic and you see these amazing creatures that humans truly, in many ways, excuse my French, fuck up, then as ambassadors, as I believe everybody who loves animals and who do it the right way are, as ambassadors, we have to do what we can to spread the word about how amazing these animals are and give back. We're not snowflakes. We're not, animal activists and in that sort of sense of the world, but we are advocates because we understand their power. And so I'm really glad. I think that's the reason why I wanted to have you back on the podcast again, because you get it. You get it. And you put it so beautifully. And you had such experience. And have been at the bottom. Yet Maxwell, I know your family got an amazing family, but right there and then, you just needed Maxwell.
Yeah, and he's the hero of our family. He is, he's just, we all love him so much. And it's every time I walk into the room, any of us walk into the room, he's got a great relationship with all of them. But my second oldest, Lila, is, if I'm not there, Lila's the surrogate me. He just loves her, loves all of us, but that really loves her. But whenever we walk into the room, and if I go downstairs, like when I just went downstairs to make a cup of tea, or when they come home, or you're just walking through the room to get something, and he's in there, your life just brightens up when you see him. and he sees you, and your heart melts, and you just have to touch him and stroke him, and he'll sort of nuzzle into you. And it's just, what a beautiful, wonderful thing. It really is. It's one of life's true treasures. And people, you love animals. That's why I love you so much, because you have such an empathy and understanding of animals, Victoria. And people say a lot, well, you either dogs or you cats. I don't agree. I've never had a cat, but I'm fascinated by cats. I am really fascinated by cats, because what intrigues me so much is the fact that they are wild animals in the living room, whereas dogs are domesticated animals. And we've had this co-evolution over the last, 10,000, 15,000 years, something like that. What's interesting, and you know all this stuff, but wolves cannot eat wheat. They cannot ingest wheat, but dogs can, because dogs have evolved being around us to do that. The survival of the wheatest, and that's how evolution works. And dogs are like they're on our side of the gate to the forest, but you look beyond and you can see the wolf. But the other side, and sort of lending us their time coming in from the forest, are cats. And I think that's absolutely fascinating. Dogs came from the wolf or share an ancestor with the Eurasian wolf. And we see a lot of the wolf in the dog, but most of the dog is a domestic dog. But with cats, we basically have a lion in the sitting room, don't we? And I think or a tiger. I think that's amazing.
It is amazing. And I was never allowed a dog when I was growing up, but we did have cats, and they fascinated me. I would definitely say I think I move towards dogs a bit more than I do cats, and I certainly understand dogs more than I do. But I was living in New York City during 9/11. So we have a little apartment in Midtown. We still have it. And I was volunteering with the ASPCA at the time. And after 9/11 happened, and it was just a horrific, very odd time, certainly living there in the city. Of course, we had a huge influx of animals coming into the shelters because of some of the victims' families couldn't keep their animals anymore. And one of the animals that we had come into the shelter, the animal care and control there, was a cat called Angelica. And my husband and I were fostering animals at that time. We had such a small apartment that we couldn't really have a whole load of animals there, but we made it work. And we decided to foster Angelica, and she never left. So that was my Angelica, and she was a huge Maine Coon. So she was part dog, I feel. But I learned a lot from Angelica. And the fact is that I agree. I think you're right. They are the lion in the living room. And especially in Manhattan, where, it's a very different life for a cat in Manhattan than it is for a cat that can be an indoor-outdoor cat. And in fact, in America, here we have many more indoor cats. There's less outdoor cats. Here it's just more of a thing that you keep your cat indoors. But yes, it's a completely different species. But there's a reason why I do It's Me or the Dog and not It's Me or the Cat, because I just don't understand cats as well, even though I am still a cat lover. But 9/11 was definitely an experience, and she came in pretty quickly after that. So I don't know whether she had belonged to somebody who had lost their lives in the towers. But I do have to say, and I want to end with this as well, with the power of these animals. Volunteering with the ASPCA, there was a sort of a big warehouse. There are lots of big warehouses along the Hudson River in New York City, along the west side. And Pier 94 was a massive warehouse that was made into the Family Assistance Center after 9/11. And so that's where sort of the Red Cross and NYPD and the fire department. It was sort of the main central hub. It's where the families of the victims would come and bring the DNA of their families so they could be matched. And also I remember this massive long wall, and along the wall was the photographs of everybody who had lost their lives. And the citizens of Oklahoma had sent a whole load of teddy bears. And so the teddy bears were sort of lined up along the base of this wall. And I would go to, as a volunteer, and I would work with the therapy dogs. So the families, at some point, what happened is that a platform was made so that the families would be able to, when the pile was safe, when they called it the pile, the families were able to sort of walk up onto the platform and look down onto the pile. And they would go down by boat. So, or before that, they would literally just go on the boat and then they would throw wreaths into the river. And on that boat were the therapy dogs. So my job was to check in all of the different dogs that would be on the boat that day. And I remember all kinds of dogs, from Labradors to Dalmatians to golden retrievers to little itty bitty dogs, papillons. And I remember this spaniel. It was a black cocker spaniel. And there's a little boy who had come on the boat and had gone down with his mom because he'd lost his dad. And with this, we're talking months and months after, by the way. And after they had gone down on the boat and they came back, this little boy lay down on the ground and this cocker spaniel came and lay next to him. And the little boy smiled. And the mum said to me, that's the first time he smiled since his dad died.
And that is...
And if that doesn't show you the power of animals, I don't think nothing will.
And that's why we must do all to protect animals and to cherish animals. And just a final thought from me, because I do all the work for human charities, and I do work for animal charities. But what annoys me more than anything is when people say, "It's the animal stuff. Why do you do it for children?" And I say, I am. They say, "What do you mean?" I say, I am doing it for children. What sort of world is it for our children, our children's children, and our children's children's children? What sort of cold, bleak world would it be without elephants in the wild? What kind of world would it be without the great apes and the gorillas and the chimps and the orangs inspiring us as we see them in their natural habitat and in the wild? What sort of world is that for our children? So yes, I'm doing it for children.
Nicky, I am so glad you came on the podcast. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences and for sharing the journey that you have had, and especially with Maxwell, and the richness he's brought to your life. For people out there, especially in the US, if you do have a senior dog and you are having trouble paying for medical bills or are having issues with that, then please check out the Grey Muzzle Foundation. They are an amazing organization. They do supply grants mostly for other organizations that rescue senior dogs, but there are also accommodations for people who are having difficulties paying medical bills for senior dogs. So it's the Grey Muzzle Foundation. They're a wonderful organization. And if there is an organization you do want to support, then please do donate to them. I have supported them for many, many years. And so, Nicky, thank you so much for coming and sharing your story, and best of luck with Long Lost Family. It's an amazing show, and talk about bringing joy to the families that you work with and to everybody who views it. I don't think there's a dry eye in the house.
Well, it's been lovely talking to you. Thank you.
Take care, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. I tell you, he's such a wonderful guest, isn't he? We'll have him back on again. To all of you, it's me, all the dog fans, all you dog lovers out there, all you senior dog lovers out there. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to Victoria Stilwell's Positively podcast. For Victoria's online dog training courses, more information, and helpful dog training tips, visit Victoria's official website at positively.com. Get connected on Facebook, Instagram, and other social media as Victoria Stilwell, and follow her on Twitter at Victoria S. Learn to become a professional dog trainer with the Victoria Stilwell Academy at vsdogtrainingacademy.com. And be sure to tune in next time as Victoria helps you and your dog live your best life together, positively.